goes back to what I said earlier, what I learned back at MIT. Don't assume that you know what the solution is. You may have found a real problem in the market, but we're often very quick to jump to what we think the right solution would be. Validate. Get feedback early on and iterate quickly. You'd rather spend too much time up front doing the research than having to tear it down and totally rebuild it, or worst case, fail to really launch because you built the wrong solution, but for the right problem.
Tom, I'd like to get everybody who's listening to get to know you a little bit better. So maybe let's start with your name and surname and what you do.
Yeah, Tom Williams. I'm the founder of Stratify AI. A little bit about myself. Born in Midwest United States, little town of 2,000 people, one stoplight.
What's the name?
It was called Cloverdale, Indiana.
Cloverdale, Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I graduated with about 60 people in my high school class, and so it was tiny. But so I went to college nearby, Purdue University.
What do you study?
Yeah, so I studied, I majored. I had a real hard time. I went to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
As I would say, especially our generation, I would say that was kind of a common thing going on, right?
Exactly. But I was paying for it. So it's like you better make a good decision that's something that you can use because, and so no fluff degree. So I majored in business management. I minored in computer science. And so I didn't know which one I wanted to lead with, but it was interesting because I thought, well, I don't want to be sitting behind the computer all day long, so I'll go into the business piece thinking that maybe somehow I wouldn't, but ironically, that's where I find myself most of the time. But so I went to, I did 4 years, got my bachelor's there. I interned at General Electric and started there blending both the business piece and the technology piece. So I ran operations at their largest, at the time, it was the largest warehouse in the world.
Okay.
There was 24,000 people worked there. So I ran a second shift refrigeration plant operation. When I was 18 years old, I had about 200 people reporting to me hourly.
And you were 18.
And I was 18 in a union environment. So I really, right off the bat, I started to learn, high speed, high velocity manufacturing, tough union environment, massive scale. The facility is so large, it had its own zip code, own fire department. It's just, since then, a lot of it's been shipped overseas, but still a big facility down there.
Once again, age 18.
18 years old.
200 people reporting to you.
Yeah, at 18, yeah.
How did that feel? Because obviously you just graduated.
It was interesting. The reason why I got that job, because GE only hired engineers. I wasn't a mechanical engineer. I wasn't an electrical engineer. But I worked at a company with my dad. He was a plant manager starting when I was 16. I won't say the name of the company because it's illegal to work in manufacturing. But I had a chance to work with people in manufacturing environments. So a lot of the people were at least twice my age. Some of them even, ready to retire, 60, 70 years old. And here I was 18 and I was their boss. That was a really interesting experience. And I did that between my freshman and sophomore years of college. And then I also took the first semester of my sophomore year. So I started that from May through December was my first internship term. And I actually did 3 of them with General Electric at various facilities around the United States. I graduated and then I went in, it started with them at Bloomington, Indiana. It was a appliance production facility, manufacturing facility. And then from there, I went to GE Healthcare in South Carolina, then GE Energy in another place in South Carolina. So
obviously you made a good name for yourself.
Well, and the one thing I can say about GE is fantastic company, and that, you would just get tapped. Hey, can you come down to Florence, South Carolina, and run global supply chain for MRI machines. And it's like, I don't know anything about supply chain. Well, it's, it's on your development plan. Come learn it and do it. And then, then you do that. And then GE Energy building the world's largest gas turbine manufacturing facility in Greenville, South Carolina. It's like, hey, can you come here and run our supply chain? So you get into that. And then you so GE was really great with all their training, from engineering to operations to supply chain. You kind of just, the way they work is I kind of just bump you around from plant to plant, business to business, and, you can build a really nice rounded background there. But, when I got into that, I realized 12 years in, not including the internship time during my college, so you put that in, it's about 14, 15 years. After that, I realized, hey, I really love solving problems here. I had made a name for myself applying technology to the operations piece of it. So then what happened then, this was one of those things you just never really ever hear about. I had a supplier that, a really large Fortune 100 supplier that had came in and had installed some vending equipment for us. And
well, I'm really trying to see where this will fall into place. But right now, vending machines and all that. But I love it. These are the kind of things I love.
This is an interesting thing, right? So imagine I had a budget of around $30-40 million that I was managing. We had all kinds of stuff that we would use in the facility to keep the plant running. Had a supplier with all these vending machines and stuff, and we put them in. What had ended up happening was that, I was looking for data. Once again, I always blended technology with the operations. I'm like, hey, I need data to understand where's my $30 million going. And they didn't have any analytics or anything like that. Long story short, I ended up building an analytics platform for their equipment that was in my facility so I could understand where all my spend was going.
Okay.
And the senior VP reporting to the CEO actually flew down in a corporate jet with her staff and, basically made me a job offer on the spot. Said, hey, what do you want to do and what's your salary requirements? And so they rented out a whole restaurant with a table like this, and we had a conversation, and next thing I know, I was moving on.
And was that a move geographically as well, or were you still in the same place?
That was actually, that was not a geographic move because that was a role that I ended up taking, remote was part of my
your negotiation.
My negotiation, because I didn't want to go live where the headquarters were, quite frankly. I did that for several years, and in this, I ended up going into a consulting role, quite frankly, for their customers. Some of the largest customers in their largest businesses in the United States, aerospace, government, higher education, and helping them to put tools and processes in place to run their supply chains and make all their, to make all their indirect operations run more smoothly.
Any particular one of these clients that were most exciting for you? That you can mention, of course.
I did. There's an aerospace defense company that I got to. First of all, they were making the helmets for the F-35, so they could actually see through the airplane. So these helmets are multiple $1 million a piece, highly secured. You have to go in there and do background checks and all this stuff. And I've been on aircraft carriers and military bases and Nellis Air Force Base. I've seen some cool stuff in this role. This particular company was making at this operation, I was making these F-35 helmets. And during my pitch, my deliverable after the consulting engagement, hey, how you can streamline your operations, bring this tech in, make things run more smoothly. I got to stand on the stage that every U.S. president on their campaign trail has ever basically spoke from. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's up in Nashua, New Hampshire, actually, is where it's located. So that one really kind of stuck out because there's a lot of history there, and the technology was really cool that they're building. So
yeah, well, a helmet worth several million. That's kind of impressive, yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I got to work at, every industry you can imagine, from, I had team members that were doing, consulting engagements literally on the cruise ship as it's going across the Caribbean, to, some of the biggest named universities, to the largest automotive manufacturers. And it was great because it was all about, hey, how can we help them run their business more smoothly? I got to see some, the latest submarines that were being launched out of Norfolk, Virginia, with a cone off, and then you had this whole sonosphere on the front, which looks like kind of like a huge ball with these probes sticking off, and that's how it sends like the 360 sonar. So you get to see some pretty interesting stuff. But it was all around, solving problems, and that was what's really interesting, because when I was at GE, I was wondering, how can I differentiate myself from everybody else? Because GE is fantastic. But the one downside is it runs like a machine. Yeah. And that means that everybody is kind of like this replicated skill set. It's like they can switch you in, switch you out, right? And that's why it would run so well. The flip side is like, how can I differentiate myself? And so that's where I decided one is, hey, I'm going to apply technology to everything that I do and somehow differentiate and kind of make a name for myself in that way. So that's kind of what I'd done. And that's doing that. I didn't even understand where it would go. But that's when I had this meeting with this leader at this other company. And, now that opened the door for me to work with all these companies across the United States. And what ended up happening then is once I got to that company, and I was helping them do all this, internally, I was like, we have no real way of running our own team. And we're not really kind of eating our own dog food, so to speak. And so then I ended up building an internal operations platform that enabled the business to run. We drove like 40-50% efficiency and, productivity gains. And so the team members were taking on, quite a bit more work. And we were able to and just make everybody's jobs run more smoothly, taking out all of the boring minutia stuff, the waste, and that's kind of what I always cut my teeth around. So it's always been, that's a common theme of mine. I love to problem solve, love to learn. And it's like, how can we build something to make things run more smoothly? And so that's kind of been, what I've done. So once I got through with all that, working with all these.
What age more or less? We're talking about the next step. What age were you?
So this was when I was in my So I spent 12 years with GE, and then so that put me into my early 30s at this company. Mm-hmm. I'm 47 now. Just Saturday.
Good age. Congrats.
Yeah,
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. And so so I did that role at that company for about a decade. And really learned a lot, because that was one of the things I really valued and wanted to value. Is like I knew how one company ran. GE, 300,000 some people, across the globe worked there at one point in time, right? Or if we go back before it all kind of got broken up a few years ago. But I understood how they run, but I really wanted to understand larger, the broader scope of how other companies operated.
What percentage of the time that you spend in these new industries that you come in as a consultant, how much time do you spend actually learning how they operate now? And what percentage of the time is actually the part that you implement or come up with a solution for the problems that you've seen? I could take it that obviously the first part is a very big deal of the time, right?
It is. It is a good amount. And so, and no two engagements would be the same, but I would say that proportionally, you're probably spending 60-70% learning. I think you should be. 30% solutioning. And if you get it backwards, then you're making too many assumptions, right?
Which is easy, right? Because especially when
I've seen this before.
Exactly. Probably when you've been around so much, you've seen different industries. Like, okay, I see this. The problem lies here.
Yeah.
And maybe you should have dug a little bit deeper and see how they work.
Exactly. But there's always nuances and differences, and say, I've seen this before, but it's not actually the same, because no two companies are identical, no two processes are the same. And so it's easy to make those assumptions. But generally, I think if you invest, more time asking questions, getting to know it, even if you do think you know the answer. That applies to a lot of things in life. It applies to even just like developing new products and stuff as well. I went to MIT's had a program for executives as it pertained to launching and building new products. And I can't remember the name of the program, but it was fantastic. And that was one of the core principles. It was like, always start with understanding the problem, understanding what the customer wants. Don't, and I won't get into all the examples, but that applies to a lot of things, and it applies to, the consulting as well.
Don't you think, especially when you come in as a consultant, and I can imagine, especially in these big corporations, right? They're like, hey, this is how we've been doing things for years. We operate this way, da, 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 da. I mean, as we said, more than 50% should be asking the questions.
Yeah.
You've probably seen like really interesting situations where people, okay, you're doing this redundantly, you're doing this too many times, or you're just, the data is not going to make sense. I mean, you've probably seen some very, let's call them dire examples of, lack of efficiency, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, some things you're afraid to point out because
I can imagine.
Like, I don't want to get them fired, but I have to find some way to tell. There was a situation that a coworker of mine, I had just came into the role, and they had, it kind of served as a fine example of how not to do something, where they exposed a really egregious thing that was going on at this company that was costing tons of productivity. And their manager was actually the sponsor of the project, but he didn't run it by the manager. And so we're presenting out to the C-suite, and he highlights this and how much it's costing, throws the manager right under the bus. And it almost turned into a fist fight right in the middle of the room. And it was bad. He was like, where did you get that data? He's like, well, you actually sent it to me. He's like, I didn't send that. So he pulls up the email. He's like, well, here's the data that you sent. And then he starts, I was like, oh, it was horrible. You didn't, the way, but you do see some really, really, egregious examples of how processes were ran really poorly. But what you also see within that is that you can be at some of the largest companies, most well-respected companies. It's amazing how somehow they've gotten there. Sometimes it feels like in spite of themselves,
I think especially if we've had experience working within large companies, sometimes you see, and even sometimes you just look at the software. You don't have to, sometimes you don't even have to dig very deep, but sometimes like, no, we got our own proprietary software. We started with our own, we built our own, and we started building on it. Yeah. And then after a while, you look at them like 10 years down the line, it's like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
We're talking big companies.
And big companies. And you find, and that's one of the biggest things that was one of my challenges, that as you go into a company, you always get to a point where you're working with the CTOs, the CIOs around the software that's driving things or the lack thereof, and how investments have been made in, and I think companies are getting better at it now, but you'd buy something off the shelf, then you try, that doesn't really do what you want. Maybe you buy SAP. I had a company that did this. They bought SAP, and they then tried to build custom modules on top of it to do something that was not intended to do at all. And a decade later, they're tied to it, and their entire business process, their supply chain, their distribution.
Try to change that at that point.
Good luck changing that.
Exactly.
But the problem is, then you can't, without a total like rip up and replace that can possibly break the entire operations, they're stuck with it now. And you see that within the technology. I mean, that's like some of the, like one of the, probably the biggest examples of that I can provide. But it's a common theme everywhere, where large companies, or in small companies, but large ones especially, it's just magnified, and you see that they're somehow running their operations effectively with, bubble gum and duct tape, it seems, as it comes. Even in Excel, my gosh, Microsoft Excel seems to run the supply chain of more companies than you may imagine.
But that's one example, right? It's like people started with one, we're talking software in this case, right? Started with one software, they started building, as you said, patches on top of it, and they were expecting the software to do something completely different to what it was originally designed for. But then another thing, when you sometimes see these lack of efficiency structures, I think is when we have this policy of keep on changing, I don't know, CEO, CTO every X amount of years.
Yeah.
So you start going in one direction, you stop, you go backwards, you try to move in the next one, you stop, you go backwards.
Everybody's trying to make a name for themselves. I saw this at GE quite a bit. So GE is a fantastic company, and it'll hold a special place in my heart. But there are roles when people will be in for 6 months, 18. If you weren't moving after 18 months, your career was dead. And what that meant was you had to come in and make a name for yourself. And you see, that's not just GE, but I use that example because I had a lot of experience with it. But CEOs or CTOs, CIOs, they come in, and everybody's looking to make a name for themselves. So, hey, we're going to switch and go this route, right? And then you replatform, you do all this stuff. You take a year and a half to move everything over to this new platform. And they're moving on. Now you get somebody else to come in. Does that person want to ride on the coattails of the person that was there previously?
To build on his name, his legacy?
Yeah.
No.
No, it's like, wait a minute, we have some new software out. We're going to do this. And so you see that, this like whipsaw back and forth of various technologies. And, it's not always related to that particular scenario, but you do see it quite a bit. And you got to realize we talk about the human factor in technology. That's one of the biggest human factors is ultimately people are wanting to perform well, and they're wanting to bring the value that they think they can bring. And a lot of times in the tech space, it means, hey, maybe it's a new platform that just came out that, on paper, hey, we can deliver a lot of value. But I think what companies that they underestimate is the amount of effort behind the scenes it takes to lift and shift to a new product like that, especially an enterprise level. And a lot of these things take years to do, but that's just enough time, to usually fit the typical, career progression, of somebody at that level in an organization. So,
well, at least it used to.
Yeah.
Nowadays, as you said, it used to be a couple of years.
Yeah.
Now sometimes you see movements in 9 months, 12 months. It's difficult to have a long-term picture with that kind of structure.
Yeah.
So we left it at, so you moved on, you went into all these different industries looking for efficiency and so forth. So what was the next step?
Yeah, the next step was, I realized, hey, I really love problem solving. And when I was at GE, my desire was, hey, I want to do this at more companies. And then I had a chance to go do that as consulting, help other companies. And then you get to a point where you realize that to really do what you want to do, you have to go out on your own. And then that's when I started my own company called TechnoCo, and helping companies with digital transformation, small, medium businesses for the most part, helping them with their own digital transformations, right?
Okay.
Because at the size of the company, there just wasn't enough of us to take on like the large companies. You can't want to necessarily start there. So we started small, medium-sized businesses, helping them implement things to run their operations. A lot of them had crews and stuff working out across the United States and everything. So it's how can we help them to put products, put processes in place to drive productivity. Because one thing you realize is that, you come into that and you've seen how the biggest and the best do it. And then you go to a small, medium-sized company and you're like, well, this is a whole different world.
And obviously, I think one of the main things is that the results of your input, you can see the result in like a fraction of the time.
Oh yeah, it's like it's turning a ski boat around instead of a aircraft carrier, right? And so you really could have a lot of impact in a short amount of time. It's really meaningful to and I've worked with owners of companies, and I had a big construction company out of Philadelphia, and they're like, we feel like we're about to lose our company because we're dinosaurs. We've got companies on our heels. They've been running 30, 40 years or more with old processes and burnout employees and they're like, we need help. And so those are the type of things that really brought a lot of just personal gratification, being able to help these companies, transform how they do things, driving a ton of productivity, stripping out all of that monotonous, boring, tedious work from people's like, hey, you can automate all these workflows. So we started to get into that. And then, ironically, I had been taking at Kellogg University some machine learning AI classes,
Okay.
pre-ChatGPT.
So we're talking what year more or less was this?
What was this, 2019-ish, I think?
Yep.
So when they were learning, like, hey, it was pretty basic then, because ChatGPT, everything hadn't hit the scenes, and it was like, when do you use machine learning and when do you use just regular algorithms and stuff? And we were like training models and all this stuff and just the heavy lifting. And I was really geeking out into how to do all this stuff and how can you, going through all these exercises is a fantastic program. It was built for executives and business leaders, but had a very technical, tangible nature that you could get into it and use some of the various tools and software to actually build AI models and stuff.
Okay.
So about the time that all happens, then ChatGPT hits. And it kind of just built on, I was able to make a connection with that because I'm like, okay, this is stuff I've been studying. I'm no expert, and I wasn't a data scientist, didn't have a PhD in it, but I understood enough in the business context and how it worked. Then you start talking to companies like, hey, how can we leverage this within our operations? I'm like, okay, it's still 2020 or so, still early on. 2021 still a bit early on. But the pace at which the GPT models were coming out was so fast. And the reliability of what it was providing was, getting better, pretty rapidly. And so you could see where it was going. And that's when you start talking with companies like, okay, how can we leverage AI within the business? And after working with them for a couple of years doing that, I realized, and then reading now in retrospective, Accenture's white papers, McKinsey's, all the big consulting firms and everything, they got their white papers out. And what do they tell you? Everybody wants AI. I think 9% of companies are actually doing it well. And so there's a problem. It's like, why aren't they doing it well? Because the facts are out there. I think I saw one Accenture white paper that companies who are successfully applied it saw double-digit revenue growth. Now, maybe that was to very specific use cases. I don't know if it was for the company overall. But when it's applied, there's double-digit benefit in revenue. And the rest of the companies out there, the other 91%, are just floundering. And
they're just spending money on it.
They're spending money.
Yeah.
And then so I started studying the models and stuff around what's the secret sauce? Like what's the differentiator between those that are making it and those that aren't? And what you find out is that it all comes down to, it's like, I liken it to building a house, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody wants a nice big house. Nobody really cares about the foundation. But you have to have the utilities piped in. It's got to be structurally sound. You've got to have a strong, foundation. And that is essentially why I founded Stratify AI, because I realized companies just aren't ready for it. They want this, but they don't have the main pillars, which are, business alignment, people, data, technology, and governance. If you don't have all that, you can't successfully launch and scale AI. The big companies do it well because they have the resources, the power, and everything, the skill sets. Mm-hmm. They'll take it and deploy it. But most companies don't have that, and so they're all all the CTOs and CEOs out there, and business leaders. Everybody wants AI. They want to apply it, but the fact is that they needed a way to actually be able to build a roadmap to assess where they are, understand their strengths and their gaps. Do we have the right talent? Is our data any good? That's going back to what I learned at Kellogg, was you can't do anything with AI if your data is unstructured, if it's dirty, it's clean, it's garbage in, it's garbage out. And so a lot of these companies now, they want to go and leverage AI, but they haven't been building enough data over this last several years, or maybe they've been collecting it, but it's unstructured, it's messy, it's dirty. And so, you got a big data component to it. You've got the governance around it. And so this is where, that next step was, hey, I need, being in consulting, I'm like, you can actually take and automate a consulting engagement like a BCG or somebody like that, or Accenture would do at a company, but provide it to a company that maybe can't afford 6 or 7 figures for that. Mm-hmm. So how could you build that? So that's what my next endeavor was, hey, I want to build Stratify AI and basically make it a platform that is pretty darn close to what you would get from a consulting engagement, one of the big 4, by answering, probably, do an assessment across your business.
So the first part is obviously an assessment to evaluate where you stand.
Yeah, assessment to evaluate where you stand. And the other part is even looking at some of the frameworks that even the other consulting firms use. There's gaps in them. They look at your readiness in general. Like, how are you ready? A lot of times what they miss out on is, do you actually have good use cases? That's the part they don't want to ask, because if they tell you don't have any good use cases, you're probably not going to want to invest in a big, expensive engagement. But so, I built some proprietary indices and matrices that plot a company's readiness use case against the use cases against their readiness. Okay. So that it basically lands them in 1 to 4 quadrants. Like, deprioritize. If you're low on both, it's not a good place. Like, you have some work to do, and we can help companies build a roadmap to get to where they need to be.
It's like to get to that stage.
To get that stage, and on the opposite end, you've got high readiness, high use case. Okay, you're ready for some pilots, and so we can help them build roadmaps on the pilots. And then, you've got the other 2 quadrants. So like, okay, you're good and you're strong in one, weak in the other. But regardless of where they land, we can help them build a roadmap so that they can get to there. 90-day roadmap, because you got to take it in bite-sized chunks. And then, okay, so what's the 1 year? But you got to have a solid 90-day to get it rolling. Mm-hmm. It's all about building momentum. So that's really what my passion has been after all this. And it's interesting, looking back, the whole thing is such an odd career path.
I see some common denominators, though. I see like your instinct to finding the data that you didn't have, when we was talking about the vending machines and all that stuff, right? Remember, it was like, I don't have any data to work on. I need to build it. Boom. Yeah. There. That took you to the next step, and now you're finding yourself with Stratify.
Yeah.
That is basically to see how you manage your data and how ready you are to implement AI.
Yeah, and it's such a, I look back and, I remember when I was at GE, one of my managers like, what do you want to do next? I said, I want to get into the tech space. At that time, GE had something called Brilliant Factory, and I really wanted to get into that and move from operations into that. And he's like, you'll never do that. You're an operations guy. You're not tech. And I'm like, I got to find a way to do it, and it's taken me a long time. It's been a journey, but I guess it has been. You look at, okay, what's a common thread? And I think that probably is, you're right on that. But looking back, it's one of those things. They say that someone's, I don't know if I'm quoting the exact figure, but somebody may have, 5 or 6 different actual careers over their life, And I think that's true for me. The key is I just keep like drastically switching from one to the next. I go back to when I'm running a milling center at a small manufacturing company in Indianapolis, Indiana, and to how do you go from that to kind of the vision to where you want to get to. Because I can tell you one thing, my dad made me work in that plant. He said, son, if I don't work you like a dog, he's like, I want you to realize what life is like if you don't go to college and if you don't have a vision and something to aspire to. So he made me work 60, 70 hours a week during the summers at minimum wage and made me pay for gas, made me pay for both of our lunches and everything else. At the end of the week, I had nothing left. And so it's just interesting, I guess, looking back on that and those life lessons that he taught around, hey, make sure you have a plan, have a vision, and all that will carry you through. But it has been an interesting ride, over the years, in that a lot of people tend to get a skill set in an area, right? And then they sink their teeth into that, and they're able to hold on to that for decades,
Exactly.
right? And really build. I've never been the type of person that's identified with that type of, I think I have some level of ADHD or something.
I think it's the entrepreneurial part as well.
may
I mean, a little bit of what you mentioned. I mean, we said that your mind tends to go to different places, right? One of them is obviously you need the data, you need to make structured decisions. So you're very structured in that aspect. Probably comes from your the IT part of it, the computer science part. But then also your willingness to find a problem and to solve it.
Yeah.
I mean, just an example, what we're doing here right now and what you did over the weekend, which you mentioned before. I mean, if you want to, as an example, just
as
jump
an
into
example,
it.
I do have a tendency to, like to problem solve, and sometimes I'll geek out with certain problems. And Christian mentioned the podcast. And I was thinking, if I was running a podcast, what are some of the challenges I would have? And one of them for me personally is, keeping a conversation live, right? How do you not go flat? If you're in a situation where maybe you have somebody on and their expertise is in an area that yours isn't, then how do you make sure that you're asking questions that are, relevant to what they're actually talking about, and just keeping it from going flat? So I thought, well, is there a tool that exists that transcribes your podcast in real time and suggests questions to ask to the host? This got a little bit deeper, and next thing you know, you've got this, practically a full-featured MVP of like automating the show transcript and pre-planned questions and all this type of stuff. But yeah, I do think that that's a good example of, I guess just the way that I typically approach things. That probably drives my wife up the wall. But, I do love to solve problems. A lot of people will ask, hey, what do you do? What do you do like usually on your downtime and stuff? We do a lot of family stuff. Usually if I want to relax, I'm geeking out trying to do something like that. It's just learning, trying to problem solve. Because usually when you do something like that, even if that particular thing that you built is maybe you don't even want to use it or launch it, but there's probably something you learned during that process that's going to be key to some other issue that you do want to solve down the road.
Okay, so we're in a position now. I'm really curious about, you're sitting here in Marbella.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, this is one of those things too that, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have told you there's no way this is possible. But my wife, one of her biggest dreams, she's had since we've been married was, hey, eventually one day I really would like to live in Europe. And I had personally had zero desire or intentions on that early. Quite frankly, I just saw no path, no way for that to happen. Very logical, how would that even work out, especially with early on, and the type of work that I was in didn't really lead to international stuff very much. And so, but over the years, what's happened, I think COVID really did open the door a lot. I started doing a lot of remote work. Even in my previous role that I mentioned, I was remote. Mm-hmm. But then once COVID hit, then everybody was remote. And I think it really kind of reconfigured a lot of how people do think about working. Now, I will say that I think there's a lot of value in being in person. 100% remote, I don't think is a great thing.
I think it takes a very, very, very special kind of person to be able to be as efficient just purely being 100% remote.
Yeah, and so that you're exactly right. I would agree with that. But what happened then is, as we launched Stratify, and we're really looking at things, and my oldest is starting a junior in high school this year. And then I've got two other kids that are son and daughter that are 11 and 15, and my oldest is 17. We're like, time's flown by. We only have 2 years until our oldest is in college, and then our middle daughter's right behind her. We thought, if we're going to do this, we either do it now or it's like retirement time decision. And quite frankly, I didn't want to wait until then. So it came to this point where we had been to Spain on vacation several times. So the kids really loved it.
Where were you?
We had Mallorca, Valencia, and down here Costa del Sol previously. We actually spent a month in 2023 in Spain. We came back in January. We're like, okay, so my wife, she knows how to work me, and so it was a I give her all the credit. She's very persistent over the years of just constantly nudging me towards this, not nagging, but just reminding me. So in January, we're like, okay, maybe this could work. So we come to Costa del Sol for 2 weeks this past January. And we toured some schools, and we're like, do we really, let's just, make sure this is what we want to do.
It is one of the important factors, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the school part.
It is.
Yeah.
And especially with our kids, they've taken a couple years of Spanish, but they're not proficient. And so we had to make sure that we could find the right schools that would be a place where they can thrive. And also a place that would help them to get to where they wanted to be with their with their university aspirations. And so we had to find one with an IB school and everything. But we came, and our kids afterwards, the visit after the trip, we got back home in January and said, okay, is this something you guys want to do? And they're like, absolutely. I'm like, you're
kids.
leaving my kids.
Wow.
3 of my kids. So I was outnumbered 4-1, quite frankly.
Ain't much you gonna do there. I'm sorry.
There's nothing
you could give it a try, but
and so I asked them for months. We had conversations probably several times a week, and I said, "Do you really want to move to Spain?" I said, "It's a big lift. It's a huge change. You got all your friends in the United States, Told them, I said, wherever we move here is going to be a fraction of the size that we have here. You're giving up all your stuff," and they were like, "We want to do it." And I'm very proud of them because they value the experience over this stuff. And that's one of the things I always did have a little bit of a fear in the back of my mind as a parent. It's like, I don't want my kids to become materialistic, And
how do you do that?
How do you do that, right? And so when they said, hey, we're willing to get rid of all of our stuff, texting and stuff makes the friend part easier, but you're 8 hours off, different time zone. And they said, yeah, we want to do it. I'm like, okay. So at that point, we decided to do it. And then I worked on it every day from March until we got here in August of just working through the whole visa process. Documents like you wouldn't believe. I got to talk to people and, I had to talk to people at the university for a master's degree. I'm talking to people at the registrar's office. I'm having to get people courier letters across town because I forgot to get a apostille and a document. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. It was a huge lift that took several months, but it's absolutely been worth it. It's one of those things where looking back, if I would have known how much effort it would have been early on, I might have said, I don't know if I don't know if that's smart, right, quite frankly. And even our friends were like, are you guys sure you want to do this? But I've heard people ask that type of question before, And, when I left GE, people were like, why would you leave GE? That's like the dumbest thing in the world. Why would you leave the United States where you have everything that you want? And at the end of the day, it comes down to, what do you value more? You want experience or you want stuff? And ultimately, we wanted to go, we really appreciate the Spanish culture. Mediterranean is fantastic. And Marbella, it really is a place that just kind of resonated with us. We've been all over Spain. We spent 6 weeks in Spain over the last few years just trying to find the place, from Barcelona to Valencia, all the way down to the Costa del Sol and everywhere. And that's where we said, hey, this feels like, you just got to trust the gut,
So what was it in particular about Marbella that made you choose Marbella instead of, let's say, Valencia, Barcelona, or any of the other places?
I think that part of it is something intangible that I can't quite even put a finger on, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. Sometimes things just feel right? You got to follow the gut. The other part is, if you look at, and I do a lot of research and stuff, and for good or bad. And understanding, hey, where would be a good place that would be a good fit for the family? And just understanding, hey, if I want to go somewhere and try to get connected with like-minded people, where is the best place to do that, right? And Valencia's got a big expat hub there, and they do. But when you look at Marbella, I think there's something special going on here in Marbella. And if you look at just the international mix of people, you still have that authentic Spanish culture. You got Estepona, I live down in San Pedro. So you've got that, which is fantastic. You're not too far. Ronda's right up there. There's fantastic. First of all, the location's amazing. You can get to so many great places within
1 hour drive. You've got all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. But at the same time, you've got this across Spain. I've been able to find it. This unbeatable international, what's the word I want to melting pot of very of what I want to say. Leaders in a lot of different industries and everything here. And so if you think of, hey, I want to come here and try to get plugged in, connected with like-minded people, where would that be? And that's where Marbella just really resonated with us. And then, what's strange is then I'm sitting here in my apartment and I'm like, okay, I got to find a way to, somehow a month in, I've been working remotely in my apartment by myself. And I was like, I got to find a way to start getting connected and everything, get my feet under me a little bit.
You were pretty much locked in, and obviously you're just making sure, hey, everything is working, family is happy, everything's happy.
Now
I'm able to do my work.
That's right.
But now I need something
Basics.
else.
Yeah, we're surviving. Okay, we have utilities in our name now. We have internet. We have all that stuff. Kids are going to school. All this is okay, now I need to really start getting some traction here. And I visited every co-working space up and down Costa del Sol. And I actually hit, I think, if not every one, 90% of them. And really trying to find a place where where would I fit? Meeting people that are like me. And I came here to the pool and immediately.
Were we one of the first ones or the last ones?
Actually, because I started down in Estepona and worked my way this way because my kids go to school towards that direction.
Exactly, yeah.
And we have a lot of our U.S. friends are down that area. And so they're in co-working space, so I'd go there. It's okay, this is cool. But what I found is most of them are pretty much a desk. It's a place to sit, interesting people, right? But they really kind of lacked, in my opinion, organization around the community piece and really anything that had a vision to drive forward other than just for the co-working space itself. So I come down here and came in and met you and Liz and just hearing about what your vision is, Marbella 2.0, seeing this beautiful facility, meeting some of the people here, I'm like, wow, this is it. I could not have planned for things to go any better. I don't think if I would have came to Spain and landed anywhere else, any other city, whether it's Barcelona, Valencia, and realistically found a place where I think that's, that would have been a better fit, And it's just been very encouraging to me through this whole process. I think I mentioned to you one day is sometimes, you have your ups and downs. Some days can be really rough. I've been working through all kinds of tax stuff and Beckham's Law and moving a car over and paying crazy import fees, all kinds of stuff like this. And so you got these days that are oh my gosh, what did I do? It's because it's not always easy. There's a lot of legality things to work through. And you got to travel back and forth to the U.S. But one of the things that, as I was assessing, hey, did we do the right thing here, right? Is this the right move for us? When I found the pool and just started meeting the people, I was like, this is the environment that you can thrive in, this is, for me, was really the missing piece. And I'm not just saying that. And so that really was the missing piece for me, is to know that, hey, now everything I feel is complete. We got the kids in a good school. My wife's got a fantastic social network, and she's in all these things, taking Spanish classes, doing all this stuff. She's super happy. And, I finally found a place where I was like, they're really doing some cool stuff down there. Like, this is just a co-working space. These aren't just, an event space where people come in and have, different, presentations or whatever, but the vision for what's going on here, seeing all just the idea, the innovation, and understanding what you guys are building here. It's like, that's the type of stuff that's fun to be a part of.
I mean, it's really exciting to hear somebody else say that and not just me. But what I feel, and the reason we created the pool and where the vision of Marbella 2.0 comes into place, is basically, I think Marbella was moving toward this, especially after COVID, right? I mean, Marbella was becoming this magnet for these talented people, come from different backgrounds. But once again, obviously, Marbella was just simply evolving into what was going to become naturally. But where I thought the problem was that the beauty of having all these different nationalities is that it creates an international community. Mm-hmm. Fine. But that can also at the same time mean that they're very scattered.
Yeah.
Like, the Brits are with themselves, the Scandinavians and so forth, the Americans, the Canadians, etc. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden, when you can put everybody together and based on talent and entrepreneurship and, basically professional, I think that's where the pool came into place to provide something that maybe had become missing, which was that little ingredient that wasn't right there, quite there. And I think we managed to create that. So the fact that people like yourself see that we bring that value to Marbella, I mean, it's really exciting. So I thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then obviously I'm gonna put a little bit of a note there. One thing that I have ask you to do, and I don't know if I'm going to regret it or not, considering the seriousness by which you're taking it on board, was basically to put together a list of things that you saw that you would have liked to have known prior to coming here.
Yes.
So, for instance, the process of you coming from the States to Marbella involves me knowing where can I charge my car, Beckham law, how does that work, all these questions, right?
Yes.
So I asked you to put them together, and I've done that with other people. But I'm quite excited to see the end result whenever you're ready with it,
Yeah.
because I mean, it seems to be a work in progress, and I'm kind of scared of the amount of questions I'm going to have to answer.
Here's the thing, though. I have tried to share my learnings for a lot of these. One of the things when I was a manager, I learned this early on, and it's something I really hold to my kind of the way I run things now is, someone coming up to me and presenting a problem without a solution. It's one of my big pet peeves. So I never try to present a question to somebody that I at least haven't tried to figure out the answer to myself. So hopefully, as I give these to you, you may say, well, the answer is not right, but at least I tried. So I'm trying to, minimize the amount of work that you might need to do. But realistically, though, anything we can, I can do to share in the experience moving over here, because it's, it's not easy, but it's smoother than I would have expected. But I think the key is that make sure that you've, find the right people to help you along the way. I hear about people, and I know people that have came over and moved over by themselves, and now they got serious problems because, they didn't do something right. Now they got to leave because, things, they miss certain things. And so, I have tried to, collect a good amount of questions that maybe could be helpful for others, but hopefully, not making too much work for you to answer too many of them.
No, the more questions, the better. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a little bit of the vision of Marbella 2.0. One of the two things that I'm working on this year for Marbella 2.0 is precisely that, to have that information available to people who are considering relocating or simply coming to Marbella. And I think everybody's going to have different questions. So it's just in my responsibility to gather them all and just make sure we got some kind of tool where we can answer them by.
I think it'd be highly valuable. I mean, I think that I worked with a really fantastic immigration and relocation company. That being said, I would ask questions. They would have to go run down maybe 3 or 4 other people. in this whole thing, I've probably talked to no less than 50 people about various questions on taxes, laws, driver's license, all this stuff. And so the good news is I have tried to capture all that. What you find is that's why I love what you're doing. There's no real good resource out there for this stuff. And a lot of times you'll go to the experts in the industry and it might be new to them because how many, specifically Americans have came over and have done this, some of it applies to no matter where you're coming from.
Exactly.
Some of it's very specific to come from the U.S., just in the, like driver's license from the United States, do not transfer to Spain, and you have 6 months. But guess what? There's a 6-month backlog. So the day you get here, you better start your driver's classes. So
it seems that everybody's going to learn a little bit from your questions once we get them. So
exactly.
It's going to be it's going to be an interesting read.
Yeah.
So you've been here for how many months now?
4.5, getting ready to 5 months actually.
Okay. What is it that you see you would like to happen in the next 6 months?
In the next 6 months, one of the things I'm looking forward to is you have so graciously offered me the ability to lead the CTO Hub here. So I'm in the planning process of, thinking, hey, what should that really do to bring value to the pool and to the, broader community? Honestly, I think that's one of the things that excites me the most going forward.
And what I would like to highlight there is, have I given you any kind of directions? No.
No, you have not.
And it's basically because I don't want to be something that suits me.
Yeah.
I want the CTO Hub to be something that helps you.
Yeah.
So I think you're in a much better position to identify the pains or the problems or the benefit that this hub can actually contribute.
I appreciate that, but I'll still be asking you plenty of questions, I'm sure. But no, I'm very excited about that because there is a lot of exciting things. There are a lot of exciting things going on around Marbella here as it pertains to tech and innovation. I spent a weekend in Málaga recently at a tech startup, and there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think that if we put some guidance and some structure around that, we can really harness that energy and build something really interesting.
Structure, in particular. I think Málaga, big fan of Málaga, love Málaga. But we've always been talking about, obviously, Alfredo has been a big part of this conversation as well, the Málaga-Marbella link, right? And I always been, sometimes I feel diluted because I'm trying to see how we can get Málaga on board. But it's like, first step first. We're always talking about Marbella seems to be, we got all the investors here, we got some great entrepreneurs. Okay, back to maybe your personality. Let's put some data on that. Let's make it tangible. Okay, do we have investors here? Where they're from? What do they invest in? And so forth. So then at least we got the Marbella side to things. Then we can start working on the Málaga thing. But I think the Málaga's got the more the startups, corporates, So we'll jump into that once we've got everything here condensed and strategized. But I agree. I think the mixture of those two, the knowledge, experience, the know-how of everybody who is living in Marbella, together with the raw potential of companies, of talent in Málaga, I think could be very interesting in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that what I really love about it is that there seems to be a lot of appetite and interest and hunger around, tech and just innovation and entrepreneurship here.
Yep.
You got all the ingredients for something to build something really powerful with, and so that's what I'm really looking forward to.
It'll be exciting to see. Talking about startups, nowadays, considering your expertise, knowledge in technology, your consultancy role, when you've seen like the backbone of so many different companies, what would be your advice to them? If you find like a founder who has got this idea, what would be your advice to him?
I have a really solid one here. This one is, because I'm guilty of it. I've built several products I never did launch early on. I've learned over the years. That goes back to what I said earlier, what I learned back at MIT. Don't assume that you know what the solution is. You may have found a real problem in the market, but we're often very quick to jump to what we think the right solution would be. Validate. Get feedback early on and iterate quickly and realize it's probably going to change 5 to 10 times before you get it dialed into what your initial launch or MVP would be if it's a digital product and MVP. But that cannot be overemphasized. You'd rather spend too much time up front doing the research than having to tear it down and totally rebuild it, or worst case, fail to really launch because you built the wrong solution, but for the right problem.
I love it because I think this kind of resonates to the part of the problem that sometimes ego can be.
Yeah.
I think so many times you find people who are focusing, as you said, they identify a problem, they get the first glimpse of a tentative solution, and that's where they go.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they've gone halfway through the entire process, and you realize, oh, well, you know what? Maybe it would have been better if you had done it this way. But then your ego, which happens a lot with entrepreneurs, are like, no, I'm not going backwards. My product, it's my product. No. Once again, focus on the problem, learn more, and then go forward. So I really love it. Last question I would like to ask you, Tom.
Yeah.
Any particular book that you would like to, that has meant a lot for you, or that you think somebody should read?
This is a simple one, right? And sometimes I always say, simple is best. And when it comes to a book, the one that resonated with me years ago that I still, even I think applies today, is The Alchemist. That story in that book, just about like forging your way, is something that I really kind of feel like is just ingrained. And I don't know if even reading that book several years ago kind of instilled something in me, but it really resonated with me. And it actually, I figured you may ask that question. And so I was thinking about this over the weekend. I'm like, what book, if I'm asked, what book would resonate with me? Which one would it be? And The Alchemist came up. And I'm like, you know what? That is the one. It's a simple book. It's not, I'm not.
It's not a dense read.
It's not a dense read, but for me in my life at the time, and still it's a profound book because of that, trusting your gut, not knowing the future, going with it. It's exactly what we did come here to Spain. It's exactly what we did launching Stratify AI. And, but a calculated decision, even, with bearing some risk, I think will always pay off. And I think that's one of the things out of that book that I took away.
Tom, I think we could spend time talking for hours, but we're gonna stop here. It's been a pleasure, and looking forward to see what the CTO Hub turns into. And we'll keep all of you posted. So, Tom, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Christian.
Thanks.
All right. All right.